Apple, a name that evokes innovation, luxury, and dominance. But behind the smooth designs and dazzling keynotes lies a story of control, secrecy, and looming threats that most people never see. In 2007, Apple introduced the iPhone, a device that promised to change the world. But was it truly innovation or a meticulously engineered trap? Apple didn't just sell a phone. They sold entry into an ecosystem that captures users completely. Once inside, leaving is almost impossible. AirPods, Apple Watch, iCloud, App Store fees, they are more than products. They are tools of loyalty, control, and billions in recurring revenue. By 2023, Apple had amassed $383 billion in revenue, with over 60% derived from iPhone sales alone. But the hidden engine of the empire is its services segment: App Store, iCloud, Apple Music. Together, these services now generate more than $80 billion annually, and they grow faster than hardware. Apple has created a fortress of recurring income, protecting itself from market fluctuations and competition. The App Store isn't just a marketplace, it's a walled garden. Apple takes 15 to 30% of all revenue from apps and subscriptions. Developers have little choice: comply or risk removal. Critics call it monopolistic. Apple calls it user security and quality control. In truth, it's both, a system of control that makes the company almost untouchable. Apple's influence extends far beyond dollars. It's cultural. Owning an iPhone is a statement, a status symbol, a rite of passage. Apple stores aren't just retail spaces, they are cathedrals. People line up overnight, worshiping a brand that promises sophistication, simplicity, and belonging. But culture is fickle. Younger generations are beginning to question the price, control, and ethics behind Apple's dominance. What happens when loyalty turns into skepticism? That question hangs in the air, unanswered. Globally, Apple shipped 234.6 million iPhones in 2023, capturing 20.1% of the market. In the West, Apple dominates. But in Asia, the story is more complex. China, once a growth engine, now has fierce competitors: Huawei, Xiaomi, Oppo. India, the world's second-largest smartphone market, favors affordability over prestige. Apple's reliance on high-margin markets creates vulnerability. Regulators are circling. Governments in Europe, the US, and Asia are scrutinizing App Store practices, device policies, and anti-competitive behaviors. In 2025, Elon Musk's xAI filed a lawsuit alleging Apple and OpenAI favored ChatGPT over competitors. Apple survives scrutiny often, but enforcement is intensifying. Even the mightiest empire has limits when laws and oversight tighten. Innovation, once Apple's hallmark, is now under question. The Mac, iPod, iPhone, iPad, they were revolutionizing milestones. Today, Apple releases iterative updates. Meanwhile, rivals innovate boldly. Samsung experiments with foldable devices, Huawei with AI, Google with new form factors. Apple's cautious approach may protect profits in the short term, but at what cost to relevance? Financially, Apple is untouchable. Cash reserves exceed $200 billion, profits are staggering. But financial might isn't invincibility. The golden cage that locks in users could one day trap Apple itself. Cultural fatigue, slowing innovation, regulatory scrutiny, and emerging competitors are cracks forming beneath the surface. Apple's global market position hides deeper truths. While dominant in the US and parts of Europe, it struggles to gain footing in price-sensitive markets. Emerging markets account for billions of potential customers. But Apple's premium pricing and reliance on aspirational branding limit adoption. Competitors are moving fast, offering similar or better specs at much lower prices. Apple's empire, while towering, has clear weak points. Cultural saturation adds another layer of threat. Apple's minimalist design, user-friendly interface, and brand prestige once defined desirability. But competitors have caught up. copycat devices and cheaper alternatives chip away at Apple's aura. The illusion of exclusivity is fragile. Once broken, the empire's control could falter. Regulatory pressure compounds the problem. From Europe to the US, lawmakers scrutinize fees, subscriptions, and interoperability. Apple has navigated scrutiny before, but global oversight is increasing. Courts and governments are watching every policy, every update. What happens if Apple is forced to open its ecosystem? The consequences would ripple through revenue streams, user behavior, and brand perception. Apple's story is also one of secrecy. Few know the internal strategies, the product roadmaps, or the decisions that drive billions in profit. Key innovations are hidden until keynotes. Employees work under NDAs that rival government secrets. This secrecy fuels mystique, yes, but it also makes the empire fragile. One wrong leak, one misstep, could damage reputation and stock value instantly. Competition is relentless. Samsung, Huawei, Google, and emerging Chinese brands constantly push innovation in hardware, cameras, AI, and design. Apple dominates profit margins, but competitors dominate market share in volume and adaptability. In regions like India and Southeast Asia, Apple's premium pricing excludes millions of potential users. If trends continue, Apple could lose not just growth, but influence. The ecosystem itself is a double-edged sword. It traps users, yes, but it also isolates Apple. The more dependent consumers become on Apple, the more resistant they are to innovation outside the company. Yet when alternatives arise that offer freedom, flexibility, or affordability, Apple faces a sudden, steep challenge. Loyalty isn't forever. Even as Apple expands services like Apple TV Plus, Apple Arcade, and Apple Fitness Plus, the stakes rise. These ventures provide diversification but expose Apple to new markets where competitors are already entrenched. Will these new revenue streams be enough to offset potential stagnation in hardware sales? Time will tell. Financial power also invites scrutiny. Apple's $200+ billion cash reserve is unmatched. It allows acquisitions, stock buybacks, and strategic moves. But it also draws attention. Regulators, investors, and activists watch, waiting for missteps. A single policy error could trigger backlash affecting both revenue and perception. And then there's culture. Apple's influence goes beyond devices. It shapes music, communication, and lifestyle. The iPhone redefined social media, photography, and content consumption. Yet, as younger generations challenge brand loyalty and seek alternatives, cultural dominance may waver. The brand isn't invincible. Even within Apple, tension exists. Executives must balance innovation, profit, regulation, and culture. And misjudging any component can have cascading effects. History shows empires crumble not from outside attack, but internal mismanagement. The cracks Apple cannot see could be its undoing. The shadows around Apple are growing. Emerging competitors innovate faster. Regulators tighten oversight. Cultural loyalty begins to fray. What happens when these forces converge? Will Apple adapt, or will it falter? The burning question: could Apple's empire actually collapse? The answer is nuanced. Apple remains financially formidable and culturally powerful. But dominance creates overconfidence. Slowing innovation, regulatory pressure, global competition, and cultural fatigue are cracks forming in the foundation. Apple may not fall suddenly, but the empire could erode quietly, piece by piece. Apple's story continues. It remains a colossus of technology and culture, but like all empires, it is tested by time, rivals, and scrutiny. The golden cage that holds billions of users also holds the seeds of vulnerability. The empire is far from unshakable. Apple, an empire built on innovation, secrecy, and control. But empires are not eternal, and even giants must confront the cracks in their walls. How long can Apple maintain its reign? How long before the golden cage shows its weaknesses? The story is far from over, and the shadows are growing longer every day.
Like and subscribe for more such stories.